Welcome everyone. This is the Masterclass. My name is Patricknazareth, and I have around 30 years of teaching experience. I would like to help dispel your doubts, should you have any. Today, we look at the poem Why I Like the Hospital, written by the poet Tony Hoagland. Tony Hoagland was born on November the 19th, 1953 at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. He died October the 23rd, 2018, comparatively recently at a place called Santa Fe in New Mexico. He was born and died in the United States of America. His poetry collection was published in 2003 under the name What Narcissism Means to Me. This book went on to win the National Book Critics Circle Award. Because it is all right to be in a bad mood there, slouching along through the underground garage, riding wordlessly on the elevator with the other customers, staring at the closed beige doors like a prison wall. The poet looks at the hospital as a place where there is no need to pretend to be happy. You can be in a bad mood, you can show your negative emotions there. It is not a problem for anyone. People who go to the hospital, they walk slowly. They have nothing to look forward to. They go with their shoulders drooping, their heads bent. They go on the elevator with other customers. The word customers is an interesting choice here because it points to the fact that hospitals are not there for charity. You pay money, you get your treatment done. It is basically a business place, a place for transactions. And all of them in the elevator, the invalids, the people accompanying them, are not looking forward to what they have to hear in the hospital, the news of whatever illness that they are having. And as a result, on the elevator itself, they stand quietly without talking, and it is almost as if the hospital walls are like a jail from which they cannot escape. I like the hospital for the way it grants permission for pathos. The mother with cancer deciding how to tell her kids. The bald girl gazing downward at the shunt installed above her missing breast. The crone in her pajamas walking with an ivy pole. The poet says the hospital is a place where you are allowed to be sad, you are allowed to show how vulnerable you are. You are allowed to be hurt because the patients over there each deals with their own set of problems. There may be a mother and she has been diagnosed with cancer. How does she convey that to her small children? How does she tell them that their mother has what might very well be a fatal disease? Or maybe a bald girl. Baldness happens when you go through chemotherapy. For cancer, your hair falls out. And a shunt is basically a direct attachment that goes into the vein which allows the medicine to be put into your body. This particular girl has got cancer. She's been undergoing chemotherapy. Her breast has been surgically removed. Instead of having two breasts, she now has one. So she looks downward and she sees nothing where there should have been something, just a surgical scar. And you can imagine how upset she must be. First, the fact that she has cancer, and secondly, the fact that she has lost a portion of her body. Another person the poet has noticed and is mentioning here is an old lady. He calls her a crone. A crone is basically an ugly old woman. And how is she walking? She is walking painfully. There must be an ivy attached to her hands, and she has to hold on to the pole on which the ivy bags, the medicines are hanging, and she is walking slowly up and down the hallways. I don't like the smell of antiseptic or the air conditioning set on high all night or the flesh flowers tossed into the wastebasket. But I like the way some people on the plastic chairs. The poet talks about the things that he doesn't like about the hospital. You will see that the things he doesn't like are the very things that make the hospital an emotionless, a mechanical sort of place. The poet dislikes the smell of the harsh chemicals that are used in the hospital. It is a smell that any one of us who go to the hospital are familiar with. It is something that is not used in our houses, and in a hospital or outside, it simply serves to act as a reminder that we are in a place where people are sick, people are struggling with their disease, where comfort is secondary. The air conditioning is set high for two reasons actually: for hygiene and in a way to keep patients comfortable. However, these patients are sick, they are feeling low, and this heightened sense of cold makes them feel that they are in a place which is hostile to them, which is not a place where they would feel comfort. Fresh flowers tossed into a wastebasket remind us of how the hospital treats sentimental gestures. Flowers are given by people who come to visit the patients to show their love, to show their hope and expectation that the person they are visiting will get well soon. However, what happens? They are thrown away. They would not be kept and cherished like we would keep them in our house by putting them in a vase. It could also well be that the person for whom they are intended has died, and because of that, the flowers are thrown away. Beauty and emotional connect are rejected in a hospital. He balances out his likes by talking about something which he does like: people sitting in their chairs. What are these people sitting in their chairs doing? Let's find out. Break out a notebook and invent a complex scoring system to tally up their days on earth. The column on the left that says, "Times I acted like a fool," facing the column on the right that says, "Times I acted like a saint." What he does appreciate is that some people sitting in the hospital on their chairs, they take out a notebook and they begin to write. What do they write about? The things that they have done on earth versus the things that they could have done. In other words, the good and bad that they have done during their lifetime. They try and understand whether they have done more good than bad. They do this because they are sick. They are not sure whether they will recover. In any case, the hospital is a place where you are isolated, where you are alone. It is just you, your illness. Your relatives come and go, they might be sleeping. But when you wake up, you are in a hospital bed. You have IVs in your arms. And you have been told that you have this disease. So what do these people do? What do they think about? They think about how they have spent their days on earth. I like the long prairie of the waiting, the forced intimacy of the self with the self. Each sick person standing in the middle of a field, like a tree wondering what happened to the forest. In a hospital, you have only time. It's not like you have to go to work. It's not like you can watch TV all day. You can only sleep. You can only take your medications. You can only hope and pray to get better. In that sort of time, you are forced to commune. You're forced to talk. With whom? With yourself. You are able to introspect. You are able to think more clearly about what you could have done, what you should have done, and what you have done. Here the poet compares a sick person to a tree that was standing in the middle of a field. There are no other trees around. And suddenly the tree looks around and says, "There's nobody else. What happened to the forest?" Similarly, the man who is sick, he is in the hospital. He looks around and there's nobody but him. And so he carries on a conversation, or she carries on a conversation with themselves. They look deep into their soul. They try and understand the good, the bad, and the ugly things that have happened in their lives. And once I saw a man in a lime green dressing gown, hunched over in a chair, a man who was not yelling at the doctors or pretending to be strong or making a murmured phone call to his wife, but one sobbing without shame, pumping it all out from the bottom of the self. The poet says he once came upon a man. He was dressed in a green hospital gown. And what was this man doing? He was sitting in a chair. He was hunched over. He was probably looking at the floor. He was not yelling at the doctors. He was not trying to say that he is not sick. He was not being strong. He was not showing that he can deal with whatever illness or whatever life has thrown at him and made him sick. He was not talking softly. Instead, he was crying. He wasn't worried about who would see him. He wasn't worried about people saying that, "Look, this guy is very emotional. He is unable to be strong in the face of his illness." It was all right for him in the hospital to be his natural vulnerable self, pumping it all out from the bottom of the self, the overflowing bilge of helplessness and rage, a man no longer expecting to be saved. But if you looked, you could see that he was holding his own hand in sympathy, listening to every single word, and he was telling himself everything. This person was crying, and the cry came from the depth of his soul, from way inside his being. And he was crying because there's nothing that he could have done to save himself. There was nothing that he could do against the illness that possessed his body. He was feeling helpless. He was feeling anger. He did not expect to be saved. If you look closely at that man, you could see that he was holding his own hand. He was carrying a conversation with himself. He was giving himself support. He was giving himself comfort. And he was trying to convince himself to be strong, to face his illness. What are the themes that run through this poem then? The themes are isolation, loneliness, how alone one feels in a hospital, how removed from life one feels. You get to understand that there is nobody with you when you are sick. You are an impersonal human being to everyone around you. You are sick, you need to deal with your own sickness. You need to deal with your own loneliness. Because there is only so much you can sleep in a hospital. And when you are awake, perhaps the people around you are sleeping. And therefore, that sense of being alone, that sense of being lonely comes back again and again. Also in the hospital, you are at your most vulnerable. People are seeing you when you cannot be strong. People are seeing you at a low point in your life. And you are able to introspect, to think about your own life and wonder what you could have done differently, wonder what you could have done better. And maybe, just maybe, promising yourself that if you get out of the hospital, these are the changes you would make to your life in order that others might benefit from you. That's the end of the poem then. I do hope I have been able to help you. If I have, please do remember to like, subscribe, and share. Remember, there are others out there who may need our help. Thank you for watching.